Live from Sin City, it's the Socks and Pinstripes Podcast. And now, here's the star of the show, Diet Dr. Griffin!
Ejections. This is Diet Dr. Griffin back with another episode of the Socks and Pinstripes Podcast. Aaron Boone is the manager of the New York Yankees. And one thing that he is known for is his ejections. Last year, he had one of the most viral ejections in the history of baseball, where he did an impersonation of Laz Diaz's strike call when he was complaining about the strike zone. And it was one of the most comical things that I had seen probably all last year, outside of maybe Tim Anderson getting knocked out by Jose Ramirez. I mean, that's a number one pretty much any year. Aaron Boone has been ejected from 35 games in his career. And that sounds like it's not that much compared to some of the other managers that are higher up. Like Bruce Bochy, for example, has been ejected from 82 games. Bob Melvin, the manager of the Giants right now, he was ejected from 61 games. And Bud Black has also been ejected 35 games. I think he's the manager of the Pirates. Scratch that, Rockies. I was getting him confused with Clint Hurdle. Boone, though, has only been managing for 7 seasons. Guys like Bochy and Melvin have managed for well over 20 years apiece. So Boone's got a pretty high ejection rate per season. And earlier this week, he was making headlines with his ejection. Although, honestly, this was the most benign ejection he's ever had. It was the first inning of the game against the Athletics, and Boone had an issue with a hit-by-pitch call, and the umpire gave him a warning and said that if he said anything again, he would be tossed. So Boone's just minding his own business, and a fan says something, and then Boone gets ejected from the game. Boone comes over, he makes his case, and raises a bit of a stink because he didn't even say anything. And then the umpire is like, I don't care who said it, you're gone. And it's completely ridiculous that Aaron Boone got blamed for something the fans clearly said. There's video evidence that Boone's just standing there, just watching the game, minding his business, and all of a sudden he just gets tossed. Didn't say a single word. The umpire, who I'm not even going to name because I don't want to give this guy any more publicity than he's already got, he didn't even admit that he was wrong. He doubled down and said, I heard something in the direction of the dugout, and he just tossed Boone because Boone is supposed to be responsible for the actions of the players in the dugout. I agree that Boone is responsible for the things that his players or coaching staff say in the dugout. That's the role of a manager. I understand that. However, Boone is not responsible for anything that is said by a fan. Hard stop. If you are a major league umpire, you have to be able to distinguish the difference between something that is said by a player or a coach in a dugout or a fan heckling. Because fans heckle. It's what they do. They do it in minor league games. They do it in major league games. They do it in little league games. By behaving this way, you are giving fans free rein to try to get other managers ejected from games based on the things that they are saying instead of what the actual managers or players are saying in the dugout. That's not good. What also isn't good is the fact that the umpire of this game also was completely terrible in his strike zone. In that game, he only called 68% of strikes correctly. The average is 88%. Now, bad umpiring, unfortunately, is something that has been prevalent in baseball for a long time. Generally speaking, if we know an umpire's name, then it means that they are bad at their job, like Angel Hernandez or Laz Diaz and formerly Joe West. I understand that there is a human element of the game, but the accountability is what is sorely lacking here. Now, there have been many examples of umpires over the years actually being accountable, like Jim Joyce, for example, when he blew Armando Galarraga's perfect game on a missed call at first base. He admitted that he made the wrong call and owned up to it, and people, for the most part, have forgiven him for that. The umpires union, though, has made it very difficult for umpires to actually be held accountable. What isn't really common knowledge for the average MLB fan is that there is a particular grading system that the umpires utilize. And it's different than the square box that we all get to see in our broadcast. Umpires have a 2-inch buffer zone on the ends of each of the strike zones that they are graded upon. So a ball can technically be 2 inches outside of that box that you see on TV, and it's still considered a correct call by the umpire. Now, 20, 30 years ago, that may have flown, but today that doesn't. When every single broadcast of every single game has the box, and you can see where the pitch landed in the box, that's the perceived strike zone. And then you can see the umpire call 3 balls that are clearly balls, strikes, and strike a guy out, then you know there's something wrong. There are also now dedicated Twitter sites that track the umpiring performances of every single game, and they have it on file. Umpires are under the gun to make the correct calls, and they just continually fail to do so. And that is why they are about to be replaced by robotic umpires. And a lot of people were scoffing at this, but it's becoming a reality when you've got these poor performances and zero accountability. Max Scherzer has come out this week in light of the ejections and suggested that umpires possibly be relegated to the minor leagues, the bottom 10% ones that don't grade out well based upon the actual calls. Now, unfortunately, the umpires union will never allow stuff like that to happen. If Major League Baseball had their way, they would have fired Angel Hernandez years ago for exactly that reason. To sum it all up, I think that the umpires are basically providing evidence every single day that proves that they need to be replaced by robotic umpires. Now I kind of want to talk about one of the more stranger things that I have seen in recent memory. Masataka Yoshida was a free agent signing of the Boston Red Sox after the 2022 season. He was a hitter from Japan who was widely known as the Japanese Juan Soto because of his ability to get on base. In Japan, he walked nearly twice as often as he struck out and had on-base percentage near .450 the past 2 seasons in Japan. His first season in Boston was a solid season. He hit .289. Didn't walk as much, but he was still a productive player for the Red Sox. This season, he's off to a bit of a slow start, but nothing that was horrific like Anthony Rendon or Francisco Lindor's starts. After going 0 for 10 in the first two games of the Cleveland Guardians series last week, he was benched for the second two games of the series. He started the first two games of the Pirates series, Friday and Saturday, going 4 for 7 and hitting his second home run of the season. He was then benched the next 5 games, and there has been no mention of injuries at all in this situation. He made 2 pinch hit at bats during this week-long stretch. One of them he was hit by a pitch, and then the other one he just gotten out. It's a very perplexing situation because the Red Sox signed him for $90 million over 5 years and paid a $15 million posting fee for somebody. And they're just going to make him a healthy scratch for basically a week and a half. There has to be more going on under the hood here. And the only thing that I can speculate realistically, and people on Twitter are like, oh, he must be sleeping with Cora's wife or something. I just get the feeling that this is like a front office decision. And since the Red Sox overhauled their front office, they fired Chaim Bloom and they brought in Craig Breslow, the new regime just doesn't have the same affinity for Yoshida that Bloom did. I know Yoshida isn't the best defender out there, but he's not terrible either. He's just not super athletic and rangy. I feel like at this point the Red Sox need to trade him, but it's very hard to trade somebody that they're just not playing for being a healthy scratch. And then you got to factor in that he still has significant money on his contract, and whoever they trade him to is probably going to ask that they eat some of that money. Yoshida basically has 4 years, $72 million left on his contract, and I get the feeling ownership doesn't want to admit that they failed on signing somebody just a year after they picked him up, and they're just probably playing this weird waiting game that quite frankly is unfair to Yoshida. The guy came over from Japan to play baseball, not to sit on the bench as a healthy scratch. If he's actually injured, that's one thing, but there has been no reports of any injuries with Yoshida. Nothing. The manager, Cora, keeps saying that Yoshida is our everyday DH, even though he's every day on the bench. Now, he is supposed to be in the lineup for today's game, which, as of recording, is Saturday, the 27th of April. Hopefully, this is just a blip and he can resume playing. But I get the feeling his relationship with the Red Sox is in serious jeopardy after this round of behavior. And now for some news and notes around the league. Jackson Holliday has been demoted to AAA, which isn't really much of a shock considering that he only amassed 2 hits during his first 10 games at the big league level. Clearly, he wasn't ready yet, and some more time at AAA will probably do him well. He only had 28 games at AAA before being promoted to the bigs. So he could definitely use some more seasoning, and he's still only 20 years old. I'm sure he'll be back with the Orioles later on this year. His fellow teammate Heston Kjerstad got called up this week. He was on a tear in AAA, hitting 10 home runs already and having 30 RBI in just this season alone. It's ridiculous how well he has been hitting. And he even had a 10 RBI game. Of course, he's only played in 1 out of 3 games since being called up, so it's kind of hard to say what his playing time is going to be right now. The Orioles are just so stacked with their prospects and their lineup right now that he may not have much playing time. We got more elbow issues going on. Wade Miley is going to have to get Tommy John surgery. Jesus Luzardo of the Marlins got put on the IL for elbow issues. Blake Snell is on the injured list now with an adductor strain. JD Martinez has finally been called up to play for the Mets, as has late addition Tommy Pham is going to join the White Sox. The White Sox are arguably the worst team in the sport. I don't even think it's much of an argument. They're probably the worst team in the league. They've been shut out 8 times already this season in barely 25 games. Manny Machado and Bryce Harper had kids this week. Congratulations to them. Zach Geloff of the Athletics, one of the only good players on that team, is on the IL with an oblique strain. Tristan Casas and Cody Bellinger are both on the injured list with broken ribs. There are a lot more players that are hurt right now, and I don't want to run through a list because it's kind of depressing. My World Series pick, the Seattle Mariners, have climbed to the top of the AL West, and in a surprising development, the Astros are 7-19 to start the season. Boy, their bullpen, which I thought was going to be great, has not performed thus far, and hopefully they can right the ship a bit. They're playing a couple games in Mexico City, which should be really exciting with the Rockies this weekend. Last year, there was a series between the Padres and Giants, and there was like 11 home run game during that stretch. The Mexico City ballpark is smaller than most major league ballparks, and at 7,000 plus feet above sea level, the balls are going to be flying. Coors Field is only a mile high, and that park is widely known as the best hitting park in all of baseball. I'm definitely looking forward to watching those 2 games this weekend. I was not also expecting that the Rockies and the Astros would have the same record at this time of year because they're both 7-19. And that does it for the show this week. I'm looking forward to talking to you guys again next time. Like, rate, subscribe. Have a good week. Bye-bye.